Welcome to the Political Grift Podcast. This is your host, Corey. Today, I'll be joined by, once again, Vincent Viale, and we'll be discussing this year's political grift. It is going to be a political grift new year. We'll go over a couple of exciting topics that happened over a year, not just how bad Joe Biden's fucked up, but we'll take a deep dive in some other things. Say what's up, Vincent.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Glad to be here.
How's your Christmas, bro?
It was wonderful. I spent some time with family up in the Brooksville area with my wife's family, and
Awesome.
had a fantastic time.
That's good. That's good. I had a good time too. I had to work, so that kind of sucked, but it was all right.
Been there.
Yeah. Like it was on and popping in the county, but
So, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm still finishing this whiskey. What you drinking?
Doing the bang tonight. Miami Cola.
Bang.
Yes.
See that Miami Cola? I don't like the aftertaste, and like
It does have like that weird candy cane
Yeah.
flavor aftertaste or ginger.
Yeah, like a ginseng type weird aftertaste. Well, since I've had COVID, I haven't tasted normal. I haven't tasted anything normal, and it's been like 6 months. But whatever. So yeah, this year has been depressing. I mean, interesting.
Full of surprises and mainly disappointments. Yes.
Is it really a disappointment if we knew that it was going to be a shit box? We had two people that probably should never hold office. We had Kamala Harris, the diversity hire, and the reason why I say the diversity hire is because you had people when Joe Biden said he was going to have a vice president of color if he's elected. I remember him saying we're going to have a vice president of color. I'm like, all right, it's already going to be Kamala Harris. It's not going to be like somebody cool like Tulsi Gabbard or anything like that.
Well, he did say a woman of color.
Oh, he did.
He threw in the gender as well.
I thought there's more than two genders though.
Well, apparently there's 80 of them last I heard. But who am I to say otherwise?
It's hard to keep up with that shit. I can't really determine on how many genders there are, but the year started off interesting. Were you watching the certification of the election?
Yes, I was.
I was surprised.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I was surprised. I'll just say that for now. I was surprised. Yes, I will agree with that. Yes.
We'll go back into also, guys, just to let you know there will be a bonus episode after this. We're going to get in some deep topics that we can't really talk about on YouTube because, they're bitches. So we'll probably get into that a little bit after that. But I was surprised because I didn't expect Trump supporters to riot.
Okay. I didn't expect them to riot, but was it really called a riot? Because we got to be careful with definitions now.
It wasn't a fucking insurgency, I'll tell you that much.
No, it was definitely not an insurgency or the other I word that they like to use. Are we allowed to say that word?
Inauguration?
No, insurrection is that the?
Oh no. Oh no, you can use insurrection.
Okay.
You can use insurrection. You just can't say I believe this was a legitimate election.
Understood. Got you. Yes. Well.
But
yeah,
I don't think thinking back to it, I don't think that so that's going to be some of the top stories of the year. Our first one is going to be the insurrection. Oh, the siege
What
on
was
the
deemed as
Capitol.
the what was deemed a siege on the Capitol and
Um,
democracy and insurrection?
yeah. And reason why I chose, not only because this happened in January, the reason why I chose this one as something that was very important in the year was because it was a number of things that happened. I honestly thought that, like, I'm so naive sometimes because I actually honestly thought that Mike Pence was going to address certain issues that were brought up by a couple of individuals about the election, or at least entertain us. I didn't expect anything of it. I expected at least some entertainment.
Some
Um,
entertainment or explanation.
yeah, and like the conspiracy theories around that, we're gonna go over. I want to go over that too in the post bonus show
Mm-hmm.
because um, it seems the feds might have been involved um, in that riot.
As
Um,
more evidence has come out, yes.
yes, as more evidence, it seems like, and it's normal. I mean, we're both have law enforcement experience. It's normal to have like um, undercover people within the crowd in case a
Yes.
riot pops off. That is not out of the ordinary, but we're not supposed to encourage a riot.
Correct. You're not supposed to instigate or encourage.
Yes. Um, is there anything else strange about that too? I know there was a lot of, like, you remember Enrique Tarrio.
Hmm. A
Enrique
name that rings a bell.
Oh, it should ring a bell. So he was one of the leaders of the Proud Boys.
Oh, okay, okay. Go on.
Now, I remember, and I'm just remembering now, this is actually on the fly. Um, remember Enrique, because he was on Timcast um, the week or two before um, the the certification of the elections, and he
Mm-hmm.
said he was going to DC, right? But then he was arrested the day before flying into DC, and
Yes.
nothing came of it. And then it came out, I was listening to another podcast um, that implicating him being an FBI informant.
I did not hear
Oh,
this.
yeah, it's bro, it goes down a fucking rabbit hole because it would make sense if he's an FBI informant because they'd pull him out before,
Mm-hmm.
but you haven't heard anything about Enrique Tarrio. You haven't like
No.
you haven't heard anything regarding him being arrested or the outcome of that at all. So that's strange and interesting. And the reason why I think you remember the plot too this year, and this is also a big story. No, was it this year or was it last year? You remember the
Wisconsin governor?
Whitmer?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Governor
and
Whitmer.
yeah, and you remember the people that were plotting to kidnap her?
Allegedly plotting to kidnap her, yes, but also there was
Allegedly,
a lot more involved with that.
but half of them were feds. 12 of them.
Exactly. Exactly. And what would constitute entrapment when it came to all that? Because again, I don't know every single detail on that. None of us really know unless you were involved in that. But there was a lot more that had to do with um, what went
We
down
could
with
talk
that.
about that.
Okay.
What did you hear? We could talk about it.
Well, I mean, just the roles that they had to, the roles that the FBI allegedly had that were, they were pretty much they were pushing for, they were involved in the planning. They were involved with, like the other people who were not FBI agents that were involved in this didn't even really want to do it. They were just entertaining the ideas and they were pretty much strung along and pushed to be involved in the plotting allegedly. And it was the FBI who actually set everything up. And I mean,
Okay,
really?
so yeah, see, I heard too the FBI was, hold on a second. I heard the FBI was not only planning but purchasing the equipment, the ropes, and the FBI were the ones doing doing the hmm
Plotting?
not only that, the surveillance. Because you remember they did the surveillance on the her what was their vacation home,
I
and
believe that
she
was right.
was yeah. So I think the FBI, the informants or the agents were the ones doing the investigation, doing the majority of the legwork, and the other guys were the muscle. So like if they're not doing the actual plotting and they're the muscle, like how can you necessarily I can I would see them as an accomplice, but if they didn't come up with the idea, where does entrapment fall in this?
Well, yeah. How does the conspiracy to commit all these acts? I mean, at what point does that become a conspiracy to commit those specific acts of kidnapping her? Um, they're not the ones who are really doing the plotting and arranging everything. They're pretty much just going along to be part of the muscle. And exactly what you're saying is they're accessories. They're not the ones who are actually doing the specific plotting and purchasing of everything.
Yeah, and but see, here's the thing. Now that yeah, this happened in 2019 because that also played in the whole media's like role that Trump supporters are staging this revolt against the government and all these things when they totally ignored like Black Lives Matter rioting and burning down cities, Antifa co-opting the Black Lives Matter movement and burning down cities and stuff like that and letting fucking just taking
Protesting
over.
peacefully. Yeah.
uh yeah, protesting somewhat peacefully and doing things like that. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I don't know which aspect. All
The
the BLM riots and
like,
whatnot.
yeah, have you heard anything like strange about the BLM riots? Because I did. I heard a couple of strange things about like,
Well, how they're pretty much kicking off with what was the shooting that pretty much kicked off like the burning down of a Taco Bell or an Arby's or something like that? What was that? I mean,
I thought Arby's food was the kickoff on burning it down in the first place.
and I could be wrong. It could have been a Taco Bell for yeah, but yeah, that kicks off, and then they come around. Then they start popping up around the country and Oregon and all that stuff, and uh, peacefully protesting
Um,
while there's fires burning in the background. Are you
I
kidding me? And
think
then they
I don't remember what shooting was that. I think it was the hmm. That's also was a big thing too last year. The number of riots that were, you remember the Chop Chaz thing?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're shutting down a city, they're cordoning it off, and they don't like white people walking around. But then you have the specific white people who apparently don't like other white people who are on the outskirts to protect. It was just a whole weird thing, and
Hmm.
then you got chaos, you got deaths and murders that were going on, shootings. It was just
But
chaos.
again, I think that all plays into the January 6th thing. I think it was just the perfect storm where one, you had nothing but negative attention uh, against Trump. Him being racist, you had all these riots, and you had the George Floyd riots, and that went the entire summer, and just regular people just were like, you know what? We'll vote for the fucking other guy. Just make all this shit stop.
And that was all done by design. Okay. As soon as that started happening with the George Floyd thing, and then those riots around just that area started getting more and more, and then you started seeing these demonstrations on different parts of the country popping up. Me myself, I was thinking, okay, well, it's an election year. This typically happens about once every 4 years during election season. Somehow it just
W-
happens.
uh,
I was like,
What
you know what?
typically?
Typical, ever since BLM was a thing back in, was it 2012 or 13 when that they formed initially?
I think it was 2014.
14? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then it became a thing during the 2016. It was a small thing, not nearly as large as it was last year. But racial issues typically weren't really a thing politically unless it's an election year. from what I've
I
seen.
I've never I'm 37, and I don't back in high school I never remember race relations being so bad.
Not until Obama years.
Yeah,
Correct.
never. I did not. I never thought it was that. I have friends of all races, and never was my race brought up or their race brought up or anything like that. Um, no, that was never an issue until yeah, around like 20 during the Obama era and around what was it 2014 too.
2008. Yeah. Yeah. 2008 and 2010, I started seeing it, being aware of it more. Because before then, yeah, sure, I was younger, didn't really pay attention to politics too much, but it was pretty obvious to me when it started. If I started catching on, and I didn't really pay attention to politics too much back then, and I started catching on back then when Obama was a thing, uh, it had to be a little bit, and it just got worse every election that happened. And there's these horrible racial issues that are just getting way out of hand, and it just only happened to be during election years. That's what I've noticed.
I also too that also too like in January too. What was I think was a big story, and I think it was downplayed too much. Was Trump being banned from Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, a
You know,
sitting president.
I not even even if he wasn't a sitting president, a former president, a sitting president and a former president being banned from social media within their own country, only in America. I'm pretty sure in China, Xi Jinping is like, how the hell you let that happen? Like, or in India, that would not happen in any other country. That's also why America is great too. But still, that's crazy. A sitting
Well,
president being banned.
exactly. And I don't know if you know this or not, but is it Twitter and oh God, is it Twitter, Facebook, maybe both, maybe one or the other. But I know for Twitter for sure, they've got their own presidential tweeting page or whatever, just for the president.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and it switches to whoever is president at the time, and they
Hmm.
literally they froze it because Trump pissed him off, and so then he just didn't have access to it, wouldn't let him talk with it, and he wasn't allowed to use his own personal one either.
Yeah, because they were using the presidential uh,
Mm-hmm.
tweeting Twitter, because that was originally like when it first came out. It was like how like the president would do. Like if there was a national emergency or something like that, he could jump on Twitter under the presidential moniker and send out tweets. But the thing that they were blocking him from that was outrageous. Like there's so
Yeah,
much things that happened leading up to that in 2019, um, that just made 2020 worse. I think everybody thought it was going to get better. Well, the people that voted for Biden thought it was going to get better, because we didn't have Trump anymore. But these people have, I don't want to say a mental disorder, but like the mainstream media, they're so deranged by Trump that one, they're intoxicated with the ratings that he gave them. And they kept trying to like Trumpism. They kept trying to keep him relevant. And anything he would say, like in his private life, they were bringing up, you know.
yeah.
What else too? Did you and going into stuff that was bleeding over from the year prior, like this um stupid 19 uh hysteria that's been going around in the world has been the highlight of the world. I think is the overarching thing they keep bringing up in the media, where you have Australia going back into lockdowns for fucking when they were doing the travel ban and then some other things. They only had like 8 cases. you know.
Yeah, locked down the whole country, and then it got to the point where you can't even leave your house to get food. We'll bring food to you. Okay, well, you're still taking away my right to go get food. And then, okay, you violate the rules. All right, well, now you're going to be coming to this internment camp. Really?
I think I heard something too, like about this year, that there's a bill going in. I don't remember the bill. This is alleged. That will allow for the internment of U.S. citizens, but I think it's still too, like, you'll have like a lot of these content creators will drum up hysteria on the left. I mean, on the right, as much as the ones do on the left. Because I remember some crazy stories that were saying, okay, we'll talk about that in the post show. Because, like, I can't say it on here, but, like, there's some crazy stories regarding the election that, you know, servers in Germany and the military is holding those servers and all this stuff that I was like, people need to understand life is way too boring for that. That type of stuff doesn't happen in real life.
You almost want to, because it sounds exciting and movie,
You kind
based.
of want that to
And
happen.
hey, we don't know for sure, but it sounds exciting. But real life is a lot more boring than people actually think.
Do you remember some of the, you know, as we're going into the stupid 19, another uh, overarching story of the year that took up everything? Like when the jabs first came out, do you remember the promises? They had promises that
Oh, the
it
two
was,
weeks?
well,
Are
no,
you talking
not
about
the
the?
2 week, not the
Okay,
two,
not the 2 week
not the two
lockdown.
weeks to slow the spread. That was that. No, that was in 2019. They started that. We've been 2 years in the lockdowns now. Time
Wow.
flies.
Okay.
Yeah. But you remember, like, Trump he's been talking about this vacation, you know, even now. Like, he had an interview with Candace Owens, and he was like, Candace kind of looked shocked on her face, like, okay, yeah, I know you are very big for this, you know, jab and stuff, but like everything he's saying was not true, you know.
And I was actually looking forward to seeing that interview with her, and I haven't seen it yet.
Oh yeah, he was saying like it's been proven that the jabs will lessen the spread of the illness, which is not true, and not true with the variants. I think they did sell him a whole lot of malarkey to get the contract, and none of that's true. And
No,
the promises for these um, jabs was that it could block the virus, which is not true.
not
It
true.
can lessen the spread, which I think may be true, but with newer variants, it's not doing that either. And um, now they're talking about a fourth jab in Israel. That is crazy. And then I just read an article today that I shared on Facebook saying that now that they're weighing the jabs in Israel, it is being warned that those too much of the jabs can have issues to your body, like health problems.
Yes,
So if
heart
it's
and
having,
reproductive related. Yes.
yeah. So at a certain point, I was expecting, honestly, to tell you the truth, this year I was actually expecting, like halfway in the year, Joe Biden to say, "Hey, we've done it. We've slowed the spread. We've beat the virus. We can open up and then take victory." I was expecting that.
I wouldn't have been surprised. That thought has come across my mind. Um, but then he can't really do that when he keeps scaring people every like once or twice a month, saying, "Oh, it's getting worse," and we're getting things set and getting a handle on things over here. But when things die down and there's a new crisis or something, oh no, it's getting worse, and we got a lot when the holidays come around. Next holiday, well, there's going to be death and horrors during Christmas this year. And then you got Fauci now saying, well, nobody should be celebrating New Year's. Just when the holidays come around and you can't do anything, or they save you 16 cents on 4th of July for hot dogs. Okay.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing.
Ah, I totally forgot about that. They really did an article about saving 16 cents for hot dogs. I did for yeah. While inflation this year has gone through the roof. I think it's
What
doubled.
about gas prices?
Well,
Why
you know
aren't
what's
they
strange? Did you see it dip down a little bit?
uh
I saw it was
I know
like
that he
almost
released, like,
308.
what was it? Oh yeah, yeah. I saw that for a few days. Did that have to do with the 50 million or
I
however many millions of
think,
barrels he
well,
released?
I saw it went down a little bit, like a couple cents. And then now, recently, like, the other day I was driving to Busch Gardens and it was like 308. I was very shocked. But I don't expect it to go any lower than that because we're going into like deep winter months before we get to spring. And heating costs are going to go up and things like that. So I don't expect the prices to stay down too long.
No, no, it's definitely not going to ever reach the Trump gas era of $1.85. No, we're not going to see that in the next 3 years.
Huh. Um, where do you think, going back on to the certification of the elections, one of the biggest stories this year, um, what do you think Mike Pence's role is in the party?
Well, I know that day, um, all I've ever heard was disappointment because of other actions that he could have. I'm going to say for your show that allegedly he could have gone another route
Mm-hmm.
that was perfectly legal and written into the Constitution as a as an option to take.
Yep. Stay tuned for after the show. We're going to talk about that.
So and so I think because that's people see that he from his actions and he separated himself. He distanced himself from Trump shortly after that. Um, Everybody's just disappointed in him, and nobody wants to hear excuses. And gosh, I want to say so much more, but I don't. You probably want to
Yeah,
save this for later.
I do think because I heard something about him in the news. It wasn't too much because I know he went to the inauguration, um, and again, a lot of people need to look at reason why Trump selected him as his running mate originally back in 2016 was because he was establishment. Because Trump wanted to also gain some of the establishment Republicans that didn't really like him being so boisterous and not cordial or not very presidential. So he selected a vice president that would round him out, round his character out.
Yeah.
So, um, Mike Pence is I don't want to say like everyone's a political opportunist, but Mike Pence is a calculated political individual. Like his moves and decisions are done in a way of how it furthers his political career and the party. So like once people started thinking that Trump was a sinking ship, I think he was setting himself up for the party and necessarily for him to rebound.
Yes, he's definitely not a stupid person in any sense of the word. Very calculated, like you said, and he got where he did years and years of being successful and ultimately being a vice president uh, by doing the right things, making the right moves. Very calculated, just like you said, and when given the option to do one thing or another, he chose, in most people's eyes, a route that he would think would set him up in the future for a better position.
I and this is too like going back to like the Republicans tend to be really gullible sometimes when it comes to dealing with Democratic politicians. I really feel like they think that the way they do their policies is in a way to get them to like them, and they need to realize the left is not going to like you. And that's the thing, another thing that attracted a lot of people to Trump. He's like, I don't give a fuck if you don't like me. Like, fuck you. Who the fuck are you? You
Yeah.
know, like people were tired of, Republicans just saying, okay, oh, I'm not this or I'm not that, Trump's like, whatever, fuck it. I don't care. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna
Yeah,
do and
we
I'm gonna
can give
keep
a
it
little
moving.
bit more. We can compromise more, and okay, well, you keep doing McConnell. Okay, these compromises that he keeps making, and every time he gets a chance to finally, you know,
McConnell's a swamp
take a
rat.
stand, or yeah, exactly, he doesn't take it. And
Yeah,
but if you had Trump in that position, then hey, no, screw you. We're going to be doing it this way. We've been getting screwed over for far too long, just like it did with the different treaties that we had. And we're like, no, America's been taken advantage of for far too long. We've been getting screwed out of hundreds of billions of dollars for all these years. Screw it. That shit stops with me.
yeah, and I'm really happy he did that because I mean he ain't saved America a lot of money, and he was not for the bullshit, you know. And other, so I'm trying to think of anything else. Like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I like to go on to the horrible, like I don't know like how you could pull out any worse out of anything than Joe Biden did um, in Afghanistan. I think that was one of the biggest stories, and I actually like I started seeing the media, and this was all, and it waited all the way until September. So we had like all this, stupid 19 hysteria for majority of the year, and then September he pulls out of Afghanistan, and I don't know what made him think that that was a good idea because I think originally Trump had his plan was to pull out what in May.
Uh, I believe it was May 1st. There was definitely an agreement between us and the Taliban to where they don't they really don't explode in regaining any power. They don't do certain things, um, and then we agreed to be out of there by a certain time. Otherwise, the deal's off. They didn't really complete all their end of things just yet. Um, but then you get Biden, who's allowed to come in office, and now he's allowed to change the date and say, "No, screw you." That deal's off, and poking the bear, and then he just leaves in the middle of the night. Literally, no warning to the Afghan government, the Afghan military, no getting out all the civilians first. Doing it the smart way, and then the military last to make sure everything's safely pulled out, equipment and all that good stuff. No, literally just okay. First off, we're going to poke the bear with the Taliban people. We're going to push the date back even further, piss them off, and then we're just going to leave in the middle of the night without telling anybody. We're going to leave civilians over there, American civilians, citizens, and we're just going to pull out the military. We're going to leave like $80 billion of equipment that could be used against us in the future. Yeah, that's what Biden decided to do.
I feel that was the one time in the year where I really felt like the media was turning on him a little bit. Um,
Yeah, it even shocked the hardcore liberal media. It shocked
yeah,
them.
like I remember, like they were when they were evacuating U.S. citizens from the embassy, and then they had the helicopter hovering on the roof, and they did like a direct comparison to the withdrawal from Vietnam, and they were really going hard on him. I was very surprised that they did that. I think because they couldn't cover this one up. I just there was no possible way they could have done that.
And right before they had compared those two pictures with the fall of Saigon and what had happened with our embassy over there, somebody, I don't know if it was Circleback Saki or somebody else in the admin who had mentioned, well, it's trying to downplay it. Well, it's not like it's the fall of Saigon or anything. And literally, that's when they started comparing those pictures, and it was identical pictures from the fall of Saigon. Chopper, rescuing people out from the embassy, and then you had the same thing in Afghanistan. So it was pretty embarrassing for the administration.
I mean, directly after she says that, they're like,
Yes.
well,
Well,
kind of, I mean, I don't want to, but it looks
and
exactly
you
the
don't hear about
same.
it nowadays. And not only that, okay, so now you get troops that U.S. troops, so they're involved in this chaotic pullout where civilian airplanes they're still trying to load them up, but you have that military presence around there to secure things. So now you get these suicide bombers that start killing soldiers. What is it? 13 soldiers that got killed. Their blood is on Biden's hands for this screw up. Okay, no way around that. And then just maybe a couple weeks ago, Biden had an interview recently that um, an interviewer asked him, "Was there a better way to pull out, or could you have done something better?" I mean, it, American soldiers got killed because of how things were done, and Biden's excuse is something along the lines of, "Well, I never heard of any other options, and it was pretty much inevitable that soldiers would get killed." Or those aren't exact words, but that was pretty much a gist of what he was saying. That okay, well, it was going to happen anyways, and I never got any better options for pullouts, and which is complete BS because you literally had what was it, chief of staff or somebody else, a couple of guys that were like, hey, we were throwing options at him, and he just chose not to take them.
Let me ask you a question. When did, because I don't follow the military stuff as much as some other people, but when did Millie start taking over?
Hmm. When did he
Was
actually
it,
start taking?
well, I mean,
um,
when was it under Trump or was it under Biden? Because I
who's
remember
the other general?
Mad Dog Mattis,
Yeah,
and he left like halfway in Trump's presidency because Trump wanted to pull out of Syria and he didn't want to, and Trump was
yeah,
like, "I'm done."
they had their own disagreements. So then he's like, yep, no, we're good.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I can't remember about what Mick Millie or Millie, whatever the heck his name is.
yeah, I thought he was under the Trump administration. Like and that also too showed the Afghan stuff showed a lot of insight into where the military was headed. Like, what did they care about more? And he was talking about fucking white violence or some bullshit like that and political shit instead of getting our Americans out of Afghanistan and pulling out
Yeah,
accordingly.
it was more important for him to think that the soldiers should be learning about critical race theory and focusing more on that instead of maybe he had his own self guilt of being white, and maybe he just wasn't. He thought there was something wrong. I don't know. I wasn't in his head, but he apparently thought he spent more energy on making sure that troops or officers were having that critical race theory pushed in their agenda.
I don't get any of that. Then none of that makes sense to me. I think you're supposed to be focusing on the task at hand and looking at the enemy. I mean, I want why do you know why like I heard something that Trump's um when he was in charge of the pullout, he had May 1st as a date for pullout specifically for strategical reasons or something along the lines of that. Do you know anything about that?
Um, as far as I understand it, I believe it has something to do with the weather being so cold around the country at that time of the year, and so it was better to pull out then because then traditionally the Taliban doesn't fight during those super cold months and that length of time. So it gives you kind of we could pull out now. It gives a buffer zone of okay, well they're not going to attack because it's too cold, and then that's going to last a few months, and then that'll give time for the Afghan military to continue their how they've been doing their training. The U.S. soldiers have been training them for the last 20 years. So there's that little buffer zone where the U.S. is gone. Uh, they don't feel that threat of attack because of the weather, and now it'll transition into okay, well, Taliban hasn't attacked, and they'll recognize that we're going to be doing our own thing. I,
Yeah.
Again, that's just what I've heard.
I mean, it would make sense. I mean, especially that the fucking Afghan military folded so quickly. And then also, too, remember, we also withdrew their air support.
Yeah, and literally that's really all the. All right, you talk about the screw ups that Biden did, and he chose to pull out the military before the civilians, and how he did it. Okay, had he had just left that air support there, that would have given the. I'm not going to say the Afghan military is super courageous. Um, I was never in Afghanistan. I was only in Iraq and Kuwait, so I didn't deal with the Afghan if they were courageous or not, how they did things. But maybe it would have given them that little extra peace of mind and support that they wouldn't have folded so quickly. They would have maybe fought longer if they would have just had that air support. Just that factor of the air support and X amount of military there for that, it would have been a skeleton crew of U.S. military. But if they had just had that little skeleton crew with that air support, the theory is that everything would have actually been fine and they wouldn't have collapsed nearly as quick or if at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that they did. I think the fact that you've had the United States government propping that government up for 20 years, and the fact that they left so quickly, I think it was just too much for them to withstand mentally. You know, and then the Taliban is coming, so a lot of people probably abandoned their lines and fled fairly quickly to get those fucking uniforms off as quick as possible.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they self preservation, and I mean their families.
Yeah.
What's the Taliban? What did the Taliban do as soon as they took everything over? They started hanging people from airplanes or helicopters and flying around, with bodies because they're hanging by their necks. They started torturing and raping women. Then our
Well,
Biden yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead, because I know what you're gonna
But
say.
then our our Biden admin, who is allowed to be placed where they're at, they give a list of names to the Taliban, and it's pretty much a hit list. Like, hey, these are the people that they've helped us over these years, these last 20 years. Here's a list of names that please protect them
What the
and make
fuck were
sure
they
they
thinking?
safely make
What
sure
the
they
fuck were
safely
they
get on
thinking?
planes to bring him back. Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
oh, here you go, Mr. Taliban. Can you make sure that these people are that they're or the name of these individuals they were helping you? Yeah. They were helping us. Okay. Are they United States citizens? No. They're just helping us out. Oh, oh yes, we'll bring
Make sure
them
they're
to you.
safe.
Yeah, we'll bring them to you in pieces. I mean, in safely.
One piece.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I, I, ho- what the fuck were they thinking? And I knew they had too. Um, they had biometric data in that um, for the pilots, and they would know who the pilots were, and they had their fingerprints, so they could go door to door. And even if somebody says, "No, I'm not a pilot," and they'll say, "Okay, give me your fingerprint," and they will tell them if they're a pilot or not.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean,
Why
I doubt that
heads are not rolling? That makes no sense to me. Why heads are not rolling in Washington right now?
Millie should be at least fired. Like, I don't know how he's still in the position
The,
he is.
the extreme incompetence, it's just beyond me. I never thought I thought things were bad during Obama's years. Holy hell, a million times worse during
Well, you
this
remember what
1 year alone.
Obama said. Obama said this: never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to fuck shit up.
Yeah, that's a quote, direct quote from Obama himself.
Like, I don't, I've argued with conservatives on this point when it comes to Obama. Obama's a very intelligent man. Okay.
Not stupid at all. Nope.
Yeah. For a person to beat the Clinton campaign without getting suicided, they have to be a smart person. He could have easily, said, "I'm depressed," shot himself in the head 3 times and zipped himself up in a suitcase. That could have happened. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't. So he's a very smart man. And I know some people, um, a particular person, she would say that she believed he's the puppet master in this. But
Well, didn't Obama himself give an interview and he was discussing how if he had it his way, he would be in a basement somewhere, and he'd be telling whatever president's in place, what to say and what to do, and he'd just relax in his basement with a pair of sweats on. He literally said this in an interview.
Yeah, I remember that.
He
He did
sounded
say
like he
that.
was joking, but
I mean, if you had the opportunity, I mean, what? Because you could make all the decisions without the repercussions.
Mhm.
So I mean, like I don't necessarily see Kamala Harris out here making um calculated decisions regarding the country. She hasn't even stepped up to the plate. Like you would think, too, with Harris this year, with all of Joe Biden's fuck ups, including the border. Like again, another major story this year. One of the top stories of this year has been the migrant crisis, where the media has finally, called it a crisis.
took
Coming
forever. But
across the
yeah,
border. So,
yep.
along with that, so we've had the under Joe Biden's watch, we've had the horrible Afghan pullout. Inflation has doubled. Gas prices, well, that falls under inflation, has doubled. Food prices has doubled. Americans' cost of living has doubled. Um, Used cars are 25% more than they were before. And then on
I got a
top of
great
that,
trade in on my truck that was a year old, so I was happy with that. But that's the
yeah,
only time that worked in my favor.
but um, all of this negative stuff has been going under, and you would think that Kamala Harris would have been a smart political person and says, "Oh, this is my time to show that I could be presidential." You know what I mean? This is my time to shine and take over and to be more of a role. And she hasn't said anything. She didn't even do anything with the border when, Biden's like, okay, you're taking over the border situation.
Yeah, you're now the border czar, and take things from here on that one. I almost thought initially the first couple of months when Biden was allowed to run things, uh, I I originally thought that okay, well, he's not going to be in there long. He knows he isn't. His mental decline is so obvious, week to week, month to month. He's probably going to be like a bull in a china shop, fuck things up, and just shove and cram as much liberal garbage agenda through bills and laws and the Congress as much as he possibly can. Because he doesn't care because he knows he's not going to be there long. And then he could just eventually, after he does whatever damage he could possibly do, and then he could just step aside and let Harris take over. But then as the months go on and people hate Harris and Harris more than they ever did, it's like, well, now if he steps out and then gives everything to her, the reins to her, then nobody likes her. Even Biden's own people and Biden, they don't like her. They literally only used her for her gender and color just to be a VP and look good on a ticket. But they hate her. And she was the first Democrat to drop out of the race with 15% approval, lower, something like that. So nobody
Yeah,
likes her.
I mean, Tulsi Gabbard helped on that one, in the debates, but
Oh yeah, she
uh,
embarrassed her. Yep.
oh, she laid the smack it down on her ass. Um, Another thing too that was major this year, there was a number of court cases, trials. One of the big ones, Kyle Rittenhouse, free my boy Kyle, was found not guilty,
Mm-hmm.
rightly so. I think that
Absolutely.
was, yeah, I think that was one of the most important trials in recent history.
I couldn't agree more. This the scale of importance of that super important. The scary thing about that was the fact that that was such a big deal in the sense of it was so obvious that he was protecting his life, and he was driven to protect his own life with lethal force. Like he was running away. He ran away what one or two at least twice, and he was trying to get away from these people who were trying to hurt him or kill him, and he was forced to use lethal force, and he was put in that position because of other people. It was cut and dry, black and white. There was no gray area in there. It could not be more obvious that he did not do anything wrong when it came to self-preservation and using the Second Amendment. So the fact that it was even that big of a deal, and there was a large amount of people and population in this country who are like, I don't know, maybe he's not gonna, maybe it didn't look good, or maybe he did something wrong. You have that many people in this country to think that he did anything wrong to protect his own life through the means that he did it. That was scary. So it makes me worry that if I'm ever put in that position, then do I have to go through this long drawn out process like him? I mean, sure that you got these, the way cases typically go in situations like that, but to get that much media coverage in something that's so black and white that he did nothing wrong, and there's literally that much of a population are like, well, he might have been wrong, or yes, he was wrong. That's scary to me.
Well, the reason why I think that case was so um, with so much media coverage was because the media spun this crazy story of him taking a rifle across state lines and murdering Black Lives Matter protesters, and not really saying the truth. Where the very first line was a lie. He didn't go across state lines with the firearm. On top of that, I mean, were there really Black Lives Matter protesters? And the reason why they said Black Lives Matter protesters is because they wanted people to assume, and people rightfully assumed, that they were black victims. And the reason why they assumed that, because the media kept saying Black Lives Matter protesters. And it wasn't until the trial where a lot of people started realizing, like, wait a minute, I've been lied to. The media, none of this is true. And then they were trying to do the whole mental gymnastics on why Kyle was wrong in this case. And since that case, Kyle is going on the runs and since being acquitted, he's going on the rounds just suing people. He recently filed a suit against The View. He's filing one against CNN, and
Good.
they're going to have to end up settling out of court. And I think he's going to go after Joe Biden as well, because during the debates, actually during the election, I remember there was a couple of campaign videos that stated Trump wouldn't have denounced white supremacy, and then they showed the picture with Kyle waving with his rifle in his hand.
Yeah, and when you got a media who, we all know that the liberal hardcore media, they frame things to, it's not reality of things. They frame things to make things look completely different than reality. And in this case, again, you got this poor innocent kid who the media, they frame their headlines in a certain way where, like you said, the Black Lives Matter protesters. Okay, well, they framed it that way because, okay, well, now people are going to just assume that these supposed victims are black. Okay, so now you're framing it to be a racial thing when it's completely not at all, and it's all white on white issue. But the damage is already done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a never ending problem with the media, and it just shows you how easily that people can be controlled, because the media dictates what they see and um, what they what their opinions are. Another important trial, which wasn't necessarily important but funny. um, Jesse Smollett was found guilty.
As he should have been.
Yeah, that motherfucker.
And
um,
I don't have all the facts on exactly what happened, but when I heard the gist of what happened, um, I like, I heard the gist, and that's all I wanted to hear, and I didn't care to hear anymore because I knew where it was going. And like the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, when it first happened, and I had first started hearing about it, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to make any assumptions because typically the media is 98% wrong about things to begin with, especially in the very beginning when it's a story brand new. But then I thought to myself, okay, it's going to be 6 months to a year before we actually hear what really went down, what really happened. So when this Jesse Smollett thing was going down, I was like, well, first off, I don't like how this thing went down. I don't like what I've heard so far. It's going to be going in this direction where he's going to be claiming he's some kind of victim, and it's all racially motivated and involved. And maybe I should have paid more attention just so I was more educated on all the facts that were going on during this long time frame of things.
I mean,
But
the
I
biggest
really didn't
fucking
care to.
fact, the biggest fact, it was bullshit. Like
Yeah.
anybody heard that motherfucker? Like seriously, fucking MAGA Trump supporters happened to spot him in the middle of the night and recognize him from a fucking show that is predominantly watched by blacks, okay, in America, and recognize him from that fucking obscure show. Get the fuck out of here. It didn't make any fucking sense. Like, first,
And he leaves. He has a noose wrapped around his
he
neck, and he
left the
leaves
fucking
it
noose
there.
around him when the cops showed up. Like, how the hell is that not making, like, why the
So
fuck is he
he's
still
waiting
wearing
with a
it?
noose around his. He leaves it there for however long it takes
Waited
for the cops to
45 fucking
respond.
minutes. He left the
Kidding
house.
me?
He ran home supposedly. Well, no, he lied. He went home with the fucking noose around his neck, and then saying that, oh, it was fucking these MAGA Trump supporters that threw bleach on it. Get the fuck out of here! Like, what is not
Give me a
1960s,
break.
man?
Yeah.
In Chicago, get the fuck out of here. But that was funny that he was rightfully found guilty, even though that the people that B wanted to bury that. Thank God that it wasn't buried, and some justice was served. Segueing into justice, what do you, and also too is a theme. Kyle Rittenhouse receiving justice. Um, Another trial, which was the McMichaels trial. Do you remember that? It was recent.
Refresh my memory, please.
So the McMichaels it was the Ahmaud Arbery situation where he was gunned down um, in Georgia. Like he was going into
Oh
houses
yeah,
that were
yeah,
under
yeah.
construction and stuff like that. And then I guess the McMichaels saw him running down the street. Some people were saying he was jogging or whatever. All that shit's irrelevant. I don't give a fuck about that. But um, the fact that they didn't witness the crime happen, which the only crime that they had basically was a house under construction. So the only crime they really had, if they didn't have a sign that was posted, was misdemeanor trespassing, which they didn't witness anyways. So they tried to effect a citizen's arrest. He then lunges for the firearm, and then gets shot.
Yeah.
So they were found guilty. I think they should have been found guilty. The other guy, though, I don't know if he should have been found guilty. The guy that was filming, because apparently he wasn't really part of it, but I don't know. But yeah, they were found guilty.
Did they have that law to where you see something go down, you have to interact, or if you're just filming, then that's a no. You got to do something to help. I don't know. I don't know if that was one of the laws.
I'm not sure. They got him for actually like assisting in the murder. So like I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But I found that was interesting. I know a couple, I'm pretty sure a lot of left, race baiters were upset that they were upset that they were found guilty, because they could have made a lot of money on that one. If they were found not guilty, they've been like, oh, it's the racist system again. They're allowing white people to kill black people.
It would just give them more ammo to use BS. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't need that. Yeah. So rightfully, they were found guilty in that situation.
Another one too that was fairly interesting, and it happened last year. Kimberly Porter, you remember that one?
Now that was the white female cop that shot the. She thought it was. Is she the one that she thought was a taser?
Yes.
Allegedly, okay. Because there was another one where it was a female cop that she thought it was her residence.
Oh yeah.
I'm mistaken those two.
It's man.
She had this long shift and she was so tired she forgot it wasn't her residence, or she thought it was. And then
bitch, did you see any of your pictures up?
Yeah. One of these pictures of a black family in my house.
Yeah.
What?
Who the fuck is this guy?
I've never been that tired. I've been so tired after a 16-hour shift.
Yeah.
I'm on one side of Lehigh, and then I wake up and I'm already in my driveway. That's how tired I've been. But
yeah,
I'll know where I'm at when I'm awake.
Yeah, I don't. That one was crazy. But the thing is too, like I don't get how you can mix up your taser and your gun.
Well,
they weigh differently.
No, I completely agree. and I'm not saying in her defense, but I have heard a fellow law enforcement deputy years ago explain to me how there was somebody who ran from them once, and they pulled out their gun because they thought they had a no, they pulled out their taser because they were going to tase this person for running from them and obstructing. So he was about to pull the trigger on the taser, but the person stopped and he put him in handcuffs and he was going to put his taser back. But there's already a taser there. He had actually pulled out his gun and not his taser because he just, for whatever reason, he wasn't even paying attention. But how that even happens, you're right. They feel completely different. They weigh completely different. It just made no sense to me how that kind of thing actually does happen.
Yeah, and then too, like if you're doing like some people do the cross draw. I do a cross draw for my taser. I can do some people do the same, like their left hand non-dominant draw for their taser.
I did cross draw myself. Yeah.
I prefer the cross draw because then I know like my handgun is in my holster, and then my shooting hand is occupied. So it is, that's what I typically do. I know to each his own. I'm not saying any deputy that's doing it, weak hand draw is not doing the right thing. If they feel comfortable with that and they know it, then that's good for them. But I think like she was found guilty on that one too. I think she was found guilty for involuntary manslaughter. But to be honest, like the left has like the race baiters and the ones that go around and say justice system is in for white people or whatever. I mean, every verdict this year has been in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
And when the evidence is put forward, a jury will make the correct decision with weighing all the entire evidence.
One would hope. Now, let me run this question by you, okay? So that one where we just gave the taser example where she mixed up her taser, eventually, like, all right, so this happened, that happened. Overall, there was a wrongful death, at least manslaughter. It wasn't murder. She didn't plan for it to happen, as far as we know. It was a manslaughter case from what it looks like. What's the difference between what happened in her case, not the situation, but the overall charge of things, and Alec Baldwin, where he accidentally shot and killed somebody? He was treated completely different than she was.
Wow,
I'm just throwing it out there.
It's a hard question for me to answer. I mean, one would be money, one would be political influence. I mean, it's the same thing when you look at Jesse Smollett. His charges were originally dropped, remember? And
yes,
if it wasn't
dropped,
for,
you're absolutely right.
And if it wasn't for public pressure, that then Kim Foxx, the attorney general at the time, she first said she recused herself, but she didn't recuse herself because people in her office were still investigating it. When you're recusing yourself, everybody in that office, you go to the neighboring jurisdiction and they investigate it. And
just another liberal lie.
Yeah. So she never recused herself, and his charges were dropped because of his influence. So I'm thinking right now the media, and he's probably going to pay off the husband or something, is going to let that story die.
Oh, of course they will, because
I know they're investigating. I know it was in LA, right? Or California, right?
I don't know where they were shooting. I completely.
I don't know if it was remember. Arizona but regardless, it's going to be up to them to whether they're going to pursue anything further. But I also heard too with that case, that's another big story that happened this year, that the firearm, they had another negligent discharge earlier that day or week or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, during that week, I thought it was,
Yeah, so if you've had a negligent discharge already, you would think he would have made the extra steps to not, pull the trigger as he's pointing at someone or something along those lines. And then that's another question too. It's a movie set. Why would you need live rounds?
Well, after what happened to Brandon Lee on the set of The Crow back in 92, 93.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that event alone completely changed the industry of how they're supposed to handle firearms. I mean, there was a bill or some bills. I thought it was just one bill that Linda Lee Caldwell, his mother, she got passed through their local legislation. That okay, well, because of what happened, the tragic event with the death of Brandon Lee, then we're going to be changing things in the film industry of how weapons are handled. You got to have the weapon master on set at all times when and these specific events and during certain times and stuff. Well, what in the world happened? Who dropped the ball on this one when it came to the Alec Baldwin set?
Well, I mean, he was producing it, so I guess he would be the person that
Yeah.
dropped the ball
Well,
or
then he's
dropped the
more
hammer.
responsible.
But so I think that would be it for anything, top stories of the year. Is there anything else you could think of?
Nothing that we're allowed to talk about on YouTube.
With that said, that was an awesome segue. We're gonna wrap up. It's been over an hour. Our end of year show will be released later this week. This is Corey and Vincent. If you are going to hang out and listen to the bonus show, you'd have to check us out on Rumble. And it's just going to be the audio version on any podcast platforms. Again, as always, this is the Political Grift. Take care of your families and grift easy.
It was a pleasure.